Before I begin, a few thank yous. Mr. Beckwith, thank you so much for allowing me to slide a little Dr. Dre into today's offering. He actually picked that song. I gave him another one, and he said, I actually think I have one that would be better, and he was 100% correct. Allie, that was amazing. Thank you so much. And if you know me well and knew I had the opportunity to kind of have a little bit of influence in what went down today, you would not be surprised that Dr. Dre and Bob Marley got snuck into today's chapel service. If you don't know me well and are surprised just because how I look, I will throw out pre-chapel talk lesson number 1. Never ever judge a book by its cover. Invariably, you'll be wrong, and you'll miss an amazing story if you choose not to read it. Caroline, thank you for that reading. Just so we are clear, Caroline is kind of like my Stitch sibling this summer. This here, 85% badass. Caroline, 100% badass. So moving forward, if you say her name, you better put some respect on it. I think you all were informed by Mr. Richards in an email at the end of the summer about my brain tumor. I think you did. I stopped reading at the line. Some of you are aware that one of our most dedicated and beloved faculty members, Mr. Kremer, I mean, after that, like, who cares, right? Nothing mattered after that. I was done. But I do want to kind of maybe apologize a little bit in advance. I haven't exactly timed, though this runs antithetical to everything we tell you students. I don't know exactly how long it will take, but tough. I mean, who's going to stand up and tell the guy with brain cancer to shut up and sit down? Okay, so thank you all for attending Pomfret School Admission Playhouse Theater's first performance entitled Mean, Mean Mrs. Marshall. I was bouncing a few lines off some colleagues, and when I said that, Mrs. Marshall said, "Oh, me." And I laughed so hard, and I begged her. Well, I really didn't have to beg her. Didn't take much convincing for her to do that. But that brings me to pre-chapel talk, life lesson number 2, that if you can't laugh at yourself, you're not allowed to laugh at anyone else. So this talk came to me about July 11th at 3 a.m. And I know that because typically after brain surgery, they don't want your brain to swell, especially since they cut a hole in your skull and put the piece back. And so they give you dexamethasone, which is a steroid, which I think, I'm no doctor, but I'm pretty sure it takes all your blood and turns it to Red Bull. During the day, you are incredibly cranky and prone to want to fight everyone about everything. A trip to Walmart, and I was ready for someone to cut me off in the parking lot, bump into me with their cart. But fortunately, the part of my brain that tells me, hey dummy, you were a lousy fighter when you were 21 and in great shape, and you were far from that person, was not damaged. And so I managed to not do anything too ridiculous. At least I think that's true. Mrs. Kremer, was that right? At night, though, you don't sleep. You don't sleep a wink. No matter what you try to do, you are wide awake. What did I do? I read a lot on an iPad. I did a lot of online shopping. A lot. It was close to birthdays. The whole Kremer family has birthdays in July, so I justified it that way. Mrs. Kremer didn't feel that way. But I also had a chance to think a lot about life while I was awake. And, what did I think about most? How did I feel? And what could I share? Well, the first thing was, and Mr. Richards touched upon this a little bit, our opening chapel. And what came to me was humility and thankfulness and gratefulness. Seems kind of odd, having had brain surgery. But when you wake up in the neurological ICU, you quickly learn to be grateful for all that you have. Down the hall was a 30-year-old man who had dove into a body of water and hit his head on something on the bottom and had two small children, and they were hopeful that he might live and be able to talk and respond. Directly across the hallway from me was a 20-year-old young man who had been shot in the head, and his family was just ecstatic that he could give a thumbs up. Me, my concern was to remember when I woke up to prank my son by pretending I didn't recognize him. So there will always be people way worse off than we are, even at our lowest moments. And so whatever you battle, whatever you see, know there's going to be others who have it a lot worse than you do. And obstacles. And it came to me that life is really a living and breathing thing. And life has a job. And life's job is to put obstacles in front of us. And life is very good at its job. Life gets a raise and a promotion every year for those obstacles. And so, as I thought that long and hard about obstacles, I wondered, well, if life is going to do it, why do we put obstacles in front of ourselves? They're coming, whether we like it or not, because life is an incredible worker. If one were on probation for e-cigs, why would one allow someone to come into their room with an e-cig or go into a room with an e-cig? That's putting an obstacle in front of yourself, which makes zero sense to me, because life will put them in front of you without your help. And embrace the obstacles that we all face here, whether it is revisions for an English paper for Mr. Matthew or Mr. Aguilar, preparing for one of Mr. Martin's tests, running sprints for coaches Tosti, Fisher, Couillard. Embrace them. Don't freeze up, but put one foot in front of the other and get over that obstacle. Why embrace them? Because you're practicing. You're practicing a life skill. Because, newsflash, those obstacles get a lot bigger when you leave high school. And being able to clear obstacles is a great skill to have. And being able to practice at a place like Pomfret surrounded by faculty and staff who really, really care and are there to help is an incredible opportunity. Not a lot of people are given such an opportunity. They have to try to get over those obstacles on their own. Maybe they figure it out. Maybe they don't. But we are in a special place with people who will do just about anything. We choose to work at a school like Pomfret because we care about helping others. But the next stop in your career, your college professors aren't going to care as much. They're paid to teach, not paid to care. And I verified that with my sister just the other day, who's a college professor at a small school in the Bay Area. So, and then at the next step, when you have a job, your bosses definitely aren't paid to care. They're paid to make money. If you want to ask for an extension on a project, there's a very good chance your boss will say, sure, no problem, because you're fired. So practice here. The more you challenge yourself and the more you overcome those obstacles, the better prepared you will be for life. Many of us in our advanced ages think back to certain moments in our lives, certain obstacles that give us the strength to keep carrying on. For some, it might be academic. For others, it might be something else. My particular obstacle that stuck with me and still kind of encourages me to keep going on occurred my freshman year in college. In tryouts for the basketball team at Hamilton College, there are about 35 people fighting for 13 spots on the team. And I grew up in Florida, and at that time, there are no Division III schools in Florida. I had no idea how competitive Division III athletics was. I was actually a center on my high school team. The center at Hamilton was 6'11". And in order to play a moment of a game, you had to run a mile under 6 minutes, which not that big a deal, except then that occurred after a 3-hour tryout. So we were all left with the choice, how hard do we go during the tryout? And how much gas do we have left in our tank to run a 6-minute mile? Which was done in an indoor track, which meant 8 laps, which made it a little bit more difficult. And because it was a field house, it had those curtains, a little bit like ours, but were thicker. They were not kind of the mesh. And during my run, I can't tell you how many times I thought about running into a curtain and wiping out and ending the misery. But I didn't. I don't know why. Some part of me said no. And I crossed the line at 5:59.9. But I made it. And so for me, even now, and talking to my old coach this summer, I said, you helped me for this battle, because I knew if I could get through that, I could get through anything. Obstacles also require assistance. Certainly, we have it with faculty here, but you're going to need real assistance later on. And that assistance can't come from acquaintances, can't come from hallmates, and not friends. You need ride or dies. Doing a little research, I knew what it meant, but I wanted to sound a little official since I was up here. The Free Dictionary defines a ride or die as one's closest, most reliable, or trustworthy friend. Liz is my ride or die. I can totally count on her to be there for me in any situation, is the example they gave. Please don't punish me fellow faculty colleagues, but I also have the Urban Dictionary's definition. Ride or die was originally a biker term, meaning if you couldn't ride, you'd rather die. It has changed to mean anyone, a wife, husband, boyfriend, best friend, that will ride any problem out with you or die trying. The ride doesn't have to be negative. If you're close to someone, you want them to enjoy the ride, the positive part of your life. And you're going to need ride or die friends. Trust me. Don't sell yourself, your values, your morals, your ethics short just to slide someone in to that ride or die. Wait and find someone that's truly going to be there for you. Last week, Liv talked about loving yourself. Now's the time to love yourself when you're trying to find a ride or die. You need to know who you are, what you believe in, what you value, so that you find that right ride or die to be there with you. It may take some time to find them. That's okay. It happens to all of us. But you will be rewarded if you do wait. I've been very lucky. I've had many. Only one in high school. And on the surface, we had absolutely nothing in common. My man, Marty Jackson, only owned polo apparel. Every stitch. Shirts, pants, socks had the little polo player on them. And because it was the mid-'80s, oftentimes he had 2 polo shirts on at once with the collar popped. Me, I dressed like I was a combination of an 80s surf punk, Don Johnson from Miami Vice. It was the mid-'80s after all. Marty was black, lived with just his mother in the projects. I had a dad who was a doctor, a mom who was a social worker, and I grew up on a big house on a lake. What mattered is Marty and I believed in the same things. We valued the same parts of life, and to this day, we speak almost weekly. I had a couple collegiately who, when they found out, drove up from Philadelphia and Brewster, New York with steak and shrimp, and we grilled in my backyard. Another drove up from Darien, Connecticut with a bag of Five Guys burgers and fries for the family. One 3 times left Brewster, New York at 4 a.m. to drive to Pomfret to pick me up and take me to treatment, bring me back, and drive back to Brewster. That's ride or die. So as we move through life, as we face obstacles that are coming, know that you can handle them. They won't be easy. But if you work while you're here, if you embrace what is presented to you, you will walk out of here better prepared, better armed to stare down and overcome the obstacles that are headed your way. And they come. And life doesn't care what you look like, where you come from, how much money you have. Life will find obstacles. And we just need to keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep working and figuring out how to get over it, how to go through it, how to go around it, and if necessary, go under it. But don't be stopped. But don't be stopped. That is all we can do, and that is all life knows from us. So, thank you all for putting up with my musical choices today, but thank you all for allowing me to share a little bit of my story with you. And I hope that for some of you, you learned something today. And to all my former players that came today, thank you so very much. That means a great deal to me. Ride or dies, right there. Ride or dies. So I will not tell you to have a good day, but I'll tell you to make it a good day, because you have that power. We all have that power in ourselves. Make it a great day, Pomfret.